Afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Kristen Utes from Utes Samby.
Thank you. Can I just introduce the panel first?
Sure.
For some reason, we've got a bit of a glitch, right? We've recovered that one. Very good afternoon and welcome all to the North Sydney Local Planning Panel and for May 2023. This afternoon, we have 3 items before us. The panel has done site inspections and we, like you, have had the benefit of reading the Council Officer's report and assisted by visual documentation. I would just like to introduce the panel briefly. Jan Morell is my name. I'm chairing the panel today and I've got some 40 years experience as a town planner. To my left,
Grant Christmas, solicitor specialising in planning and environment law.
Thank you.
John McInerney, architect and town planner, the past Deputy Lord Mayor, City of Sydney.
John Bahane, architect and local resident.
And John is our community representative on the panel. The process this afternoon is we'll hear from objectors and those who made submissions, and then we invite the applicants team, architects, planners, to address the panel. And I would like you to also respond to what you hear from any submitters in terms of your address to our panel. This is an official recording, the only recording that can be made of today's proceedings. This is a public meeting for the first item, as it has had more than 10 objections. The process is then, following the meeting, the public meeting and the closed meetings, this panel has a determination session this afternoon and considers each of the development applications before it, and our decision will be on the website by close of business on Friday at the latest. So thank you all for giving us your time in attending and assisting the panel in its deliberations. So the first item that we have today is Cowdroy Avenue, 58 Cowdroy Avenue. And I have a number of people who wish to speak to us on Cowdroy Avenue. Registered to speak, if you could just identify that you're there. Raymond NG. Raymond?
Yes, hi. Hi, panel. Yes, I'm Raymond here.
Yep, thank you. And Stanley Ewan? Stanley Ewan not there?
So Stanley's the, he's probably not speaking today. He'll be just listening in to the panel.
He's listening. Okay, thank you very much for that. Tim and Carolyn Keith.
Hi there, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. David Manchie. No, not here. From 54C Cowdroy Avenue. No.
No.
Thomas Blamey.
Yes.
No.
Good afternoon. I'm listening in.
You're listening in, and you don't wish to address the panel?
I don't think so, but if I wish to, I'll ask Chair if I may do so at the end.
Very well. Okay, and Anthony Solomon.
Good afternoon, panel. I'll talk at the end, I'm sure.
Right, thank you very much.
And we've got a Min Wang. Is there a Min Wang?
Observing, we've got Min
okay.
Wang. Is Min Wang observing?
President, I'll be listening in. Yeah.
Listening in, thank you very much. Great. So we'll now commence, and I'd just like to identify that we have received 6 written submissions from Ian Glasson and Magda Satori, Dr. Glenn Lawcock and Elizabeth Roy, Min Wang, David Manchie, Tim and Carolyn Keith, Thomas Blamey. Very well, so we'll commence with those who made submissions. Now, Raymond, you are representing 2 Folly Point.
That's correct, yes.
Right, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll start off with aligning the letter that we have submitted to council previously. So mainly the 3 points that we'd like to point out is the impact of the proposal, the 58 Caldera, against our subject site number 2, Foley Point, is the impact to view sharing and the view lost. We understand it could be a small fraction of the view that will be lost, but still it's still quite detrimental to the level 2 and level 3 of number 2 Foley Point. The second thing I'd like to point out is the overlooking and privacy issues that will have an impact from the proposed number 58 Caldera's terrace, and also level 2 balconies overlooking into bedrooms and breakfast areas and terraces of number 2 Foley Point. Thirdly is the insufficient or incorrect information that's been proposed on 58 Caldera, whereby I believe the most significant one would be the front elevations and sections, whereby 2 Foley Point is actually a 4-story building and not 3 stories as shown in the drawings. So I think that might have a bit of impact on looking at the view analysis as well as the privacy issues that should be reconsidered and looked into further. Last of all is the materials schedule. The owner of 2 Foley Point is concerned where metallic panels or claddings would be used, and it would be of a high shiny reflective surface. So that should be put into consideration for the proposal. So the last item would be the 58 Caldera Avenue. For the lowest level, there's a laundry area where previously there was a decking that walks out from the laundry. That has now been changed to a landscaping area, but it's not clearly shown in the sections or elevations how the treatment of the boundary is to be proposed. So we'd like to know whether a high wall or a boundary fence would be proposed along that facing number 2 Foley Point. So that's the 5 points I'd like to make.
I'll just start the questions off. Raymond, I'll just ask you in terms of view sharing, view loss. Have you done an analysis from your client's property in that regard? So what part of the view are you saying is lost from that?
So from level 3 and level 4 of the 2 Foley Point, the west facing rooms will have an impact, view impact from the new proposal, top floor terrace, which protrudes into the view lines of number 2 Foley Points. And we were under the impression that there should be view analysis provided for our site as well.
It's pretty well in alignment with your client's property.
Yeah.
I mean, it is forward, but
correct. I mean, the built form, regardless of the terrace, it is in line with the building form in general. You're right. But the extent of the terrace and the level of the terraces could, in a way, block off some of the views towards the west from number 2 Foley Point.
okay then. Any other questions? Yes, thank you.
Mr. Bing, the view across the applicant's site, that's proposed to be interrupted by a privacy screen on that terrace. Is that something that you've seen in the conditions? It's actually, you'd have to look in the conditions that are proposed.
Right, the recommended conditions.
Yeah.
Yep.
There is an argument as to whether the privacy screen is better not to be there, if I could put it that way. In other words,
correct, yeah,
better without it.
I think from client's perspective, it could be more important to have the privacy and sacrifice margin of your loss. It is the pro and con. So
Thanks. I just wanted to raise that.
yeah, understood.
So even though the view loss would be increased, you'd rather have the privacy screens? Because in areas such as this, there's usually mutual overlooking, and that's accepted in these locations.
Understood. Okay. So I think the privacy screen is it's a more important factor to be provided in this instance. Whether the terrace could be reduced in size scale, that might be a consideration.
Yep. Or make sure that the privacy screens are not full height. Yeah. Anyway, that's a matter for the panel to consider.
Thank you.
Okay, very well. Any other questions? No. Okay then. Rightio, thank you very much. Now could I ask Tim Keith to address the panel? You're from number 56.
That's right. Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the panel for hearing our concerns today. So both Carolyn and I are on the call. Carolyn's in Sydney and I'm on work in Melbourne. We've got three concerns we'd like to raise. Firstly, whether due process was applied to the application review process. Secondly, the application itself. And then thirdly, the impact on the proposed development on our property, as well as other neighbours to the west and from the harbour. So firstly, to due process. We have a number of concerns on due process applied in assessing the application by the consultant. Firstly, the applicant appears to have been engaged on a number of occasions by the author of the report, yet as objectors, we were not consulted at all, nor did the author of the report request a visit to our property to understand the development's impact. To the best of our knowledge, none of the other objectors were consulted by the author of the report. Secondly, there appears to be...
Just in terms of process, Tim, the assessment had regard to the objections received, and that's what the process requires.
Right, so they don't have to talk to us about it, they just assess that themselves.
That's right, yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, the second one that we're concerned about, Chair, is that there doesn't appear to be any independent verification of the applicant's measurements or statements as they relate to height, scale, site coverage, landscaping, etc. Our understanding is that independent calculations should be made to verify these statements. And certainly for our own application, council certainly calculated themselves, but we didn't see any of evidence of that.
Well, I'm sorry, I'll just once again, that's something that's something that is carried out during the assessment of the application. And we understand that the survey levels were gained from the properties either side of the subject site.
Yeah, but the trouble was those survey levels weren't applied consistently through the assessment. So in some cases, the existing ground level RLs differ markedly from the survey document to those used to calculate height breaches. And in some instances, there's a 2.5 metre difference.
Well, that's a matter that we'll look at in terms of the assessment, and we'll ask for clarification on that point. Okay, yes, please continue. Yep. Okay.
I guess finally, there are a couple of other things with regards to due process. So, and there's a number of times within the report that it contradicts itself in support of the development. And so we've actually detailed where they've come up in our written submission, but I'm happy to point to those examples. And finally...
No, actually, if you could do that now, that'd be, yep.
All right, well, on page 62, to justify no impact or solar loss to our property, the report states given orientation of subdivision pattern, adjacent dwellings have north-facing living areas that receive high levels of direct solar access.
Yep.
But then on page 69, to justify that the applicant couldn't comply with height requirements, neighbouring properties are multi-level, which limits opportunity for natural light and outlook to the northern facade. Then she goes on in other parts of the report to justify the design as being required due to the steep slope of the block, yet also declares throughout the report there's no natural landform or topography, and therefore the design does not need to follow the land in an appropriately stepped manner. So that just seems completely contradictory to us.
Okay, I'm just looking for the paragraph on 69 that refers to what you've just said about multi-story. Yeah, they're all north facing, so they all receive good northern, especially winter sun. Yes.
That's right.
So where's this quote on page 69? I'm just looking for it.
I don't have it in front of me here, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, then I'll find it later. Fine, thank you. Yep, and the next point was, sorry.
I was just talking about how saying in one stage that the design is required due to the steep slope of the block. Then it declares there's no natural landform or topography, and therefore the design does not need to follow the land in an appropriately stepped manner. So seems a bit both ways.
Well, and it has previously been altered. We can see that on site by previous excavations in the dwelling. Anyway, yes, we'll look at that as well.
All right. So as regards to the application, a few concerns. So firstly, within the architectural plans provided, there's no consistency in the use of RL's grid lines or ground levels. Instead, the applicant chooses when to apply them to the plans and when not to. Surely the same RL's grid lines and ground levels should be applied to every plan and section to allow anyone assessing the application to form a consistent view of the development. In particular, existing ground level RLs differ markedly between the survey document and those used for height breaches and in some of the sections. And you'll notice that as you go through the plans, that there's no consistency there. In addition to that point, height profiles were not erected on the site, which is unusual because they are normally required and they need to be certified by a surveyor when there are breaches of height standard and when view loss has been raised as a concern, as it has been by us and 2 Folly Point. Further, the last development application for 58 Cowdroy Avenue that was refused by the council and then the Land Environment Court, partly because of the breach of height, was unable to be properly determined. Without consistent use of ground levels on the plans and surveyor approved height profiles, how can we make an assessment on this application? Finally, with regards to the application.
So is that in respect of the height breach?
Yes. There should be height poles so that we can see exactly where the height breaches are and their exact impact on us as neighbours and objectors.
Well, height poles are not always required. Were there height poles erected for your variation to your height of some 55%?
Well, our height varied by 5 centimetres, Chair, from the previous height of the building. It was
I'm not talking about the previous height. I'm talking about in terms of council's development standard.
I'm not sure what you're asking, sorry.
All right, I understand that not that it's a matter for us here, but I understand that the height of your dwelling significantly breached the council's 8.5 metre height limit.
Yeah, that was an existing dwelling.
Well,
we're in exactly the same footprint, and the roof is 5 centimetres higher than it was previous to the development.
No, as it's alterations and additions.
That's right.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but the dwelling is coming forward, but I'm not here to argue the facts of that. But the dwelling is coming forward, so clearly there are height breaches within the new portion of the dwelling. But if we can just get back to the height of this dwelling that you're concerned about and the impacts on yourself.
Yep. Okay. And just finally, in terms of the application, so the applicant wrote to us requesting we make contact with their consultant, Urbane Architecture, to allow them to undertake a view analysis. Only a mobile phone number was provided. There was no email, no address, and no follow-up occurred. We duly contacted the consultant by phone, spoke to the consultant, and were told that they had not finalised the design and would be back in touch when this occurred. We notified council we had complied with the applicant's request. In the report, the view loss reduction analysis was provided for the application, and it stated we had not allowed them access. This is a completely false statement and not investigated by the report. So that gives us concerns around the veracity of some of the statements within the report. Okay, now moving on, as you requested, Chair, to impacts on our property and other Western neighbours and from the harbour. Members of the panel would have read our original objection and our submission to the panel. These are very detailed submissions. In summary, we do not support the application because of view loss and privacy concerns caused by the excessive and non-compliant building height, which includes their pool, which will be almost 6 metres above ground level on our boundary. It's excessive bulk scale and height, which is out of character to the neighbouring properties along Cowdroy Avenue and goes against the future desired appearance of the foreshore as per the LEP. The setback from the foreshore, also out of character and against the future desired appearance of the foreshore, and concerns with some of the conditions of approvals. So we don't think that this application is significantly different to proposals refused by the panel. We're concerned about process, and we're concerned that the objections weren't given enough merit, and those negative impacts will have a substantial impact on us and on those that use the harbour. We think it sets an undesirable precedence.
Okay, I'll just ask the panel members if they have any questions.
Thanks.
No. Very well. Okay, well, thank you very much. As you're aware, all the panel members have inspected the site, and I even had the benefit of going onto your property today with the permission of your foreman.
Oh, that's great.
So we will consider your application later consider the application later, but by all means you can stay on the line while we hear from the applicant's team. So thank you. And can I now move to the applicant's architect?
Good afternoon, panel, and thanks for the time to address you today.
Solomon, thank you.
Yes, that's me. I won't bore you with the long history, but as you probably are aware, there is a very long history with this application, and the previous application was refused. And incidentally, there were height poles erected for that application for a very lengthy period of time.
So, okay, so can I just clarify when the height poles were in place?
For the previous application, which was now over a year ago.
Oh, sorry. Okay, for the previous application.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, then. Thank you.
Anyway, the applicant regrouped, and we engaged with council to try and come up with a solution that would try and appease all parties and still allow the applicant to have his retirement home effectively. And so with extensive consultation with council, and then we did lodge the application, and then there was an inordinate amount of additional technical information required by council, which was obviously took a long time with many consultants involved. So it's a very long and exhaustive process, and we thank Jim Davis for his patience because it did take a long time to get a lot of this information, and as you can appreciate, it was difficult to get view analysis sometimes simply because of the nature of trying to get access or accessibility to neighbouring sites. Anyway, all that aside, you've seen the site, you can see the difficulties. Obviously, we don't believe that this is excessive in size and bulk and height, particularly when compared with both neighbours. But I don't want to really talk about merits or anything. It's a very extensive report. And I do have a couple of questions about some of the conditions, which I'd like to bring to your attention, if I may. Conditions.
First of all, can I just ask you to respond to the concerns about the objectors' concerns about height levels, etc., on site?
Well, I don't agree with that at all, because we've had surveyors, 2 lots of surveyors sign off on all the levels. We've done, we would have had consultants from all disciplines, civil engineering, surveyors, hydraulic, view loss analysis, and the 3D renderings were also all signed off with all their height levels. So, I don't agree with that. It's a difficult site in that the site falls steeply, and it falls in some parts down little chasms because of the old house. So there could be an RL that might be 1 or 2 metres below another RL next to it, simply because of some existing wall, retaining wall on the site. So it's a difficult and awkward site, as you've seen. But as I said, council have been very diligent in asking for consultants' information, and it's always been provided. And that's probably why it's taken so long, because it takes a long time to get all this technical information to council.
Right, okay, so before you go to the conditions, we'll leave that for a moment, and we'll just see whether we've got any questions from other panel members. So can I invite, yes, John?
Hi, Anthony. We've been looking at the scheme very closely, and there is a lot of information, and this might be a little bit of a value judgment, but the original design made a lot of sense in terms of its form as a piece of architecture. And the second reiteration seems to have been a compromise in response to the concerns of council and neighbours. I think there's 2 points that I wonder whether you'd considered stepping the roof, because at the moment it's a step profile and then it goes into a long skillion roof.
Mm.
We wondered whether stepping that roof form would help you reduce bulk and also bring light into the back of the deep living space.
Over time, many iterations have been considered. I remember we have to do this with the owners, the ultimate users. It is the deep-seated wish of the neighbours not to have a flat ceiling or roof in their living areas. They wanted to try and create some sort of volume in their living areas, because look, if the owner was here, he would tell you he grew up with a flat ceiling, and there's something happened in his childhood he didn't like. But look, we have explored every iteration, and I do take on your point about the original, and then yes, the second and third iteration, some of the architectural merit sort of is lost a little bit, and I guess you call it sort of design by committee. There are so many differing reasons to formulate something, and which I can't go into it all in detail, nor can I even remember it all. But it's come to this form over a long period of time through a number of factors. But look, the owners are very comfortable and happy with the outcome, and so are we, and we hope so are council.
Okay, Anthony, one other question.
Because just before you, sorry, just the question that arises from that. Thank you, Anthony. Well, instead of a flat roof, you could have it, say, at 7 or 8%. Before you step up to the light windows kitchen area.
We have changed the gradient of the slope of the roof a number of times. What is the current? It's about 15% or something like that. But I think we've landed on a happy medium to what the owners originally wanted, and not a flat roof, and somewhere in between, which allows for the views to be shared, and not detract from the, not be too bulky, and also to to highlight the roof. I mean, because if this goes to my question on the conditions, which I'm about to get to. We've got a zinc roof, but like that's part of this condition, which I want to chat about. But like I want to see the roof, and if you go around the harbour, the foreshore, you do see, because they're steep slopes, sloping roofs, quite steep sloping roofs in some cases, which highlights the roof. But if the roof is a beautiful thing, then then it's not a bad thing.
I suppose the issue is, can you then ameliorate the impact on views by having a roof as just been described by John?
Well, we believe we already have, all things considered. It's significantly lower than the previous application, and the gradient of the roof is also greatly reduced. So
now, you've got to bear in mind we're assessing this development application, not where you've been.
Of course, I totally appreciate that, but
we have to have regard to view loss.
Of course you do. We still believe we've landed on, as I said, a happy medium, the right solution. If it varied by 1 or 2 degrees, then I'm sure no one would really know. It wouldn't really make that much of a difference. But like if you're going down to 7 degrees, it's starting to get towards the flat roof, and then it loses its luster. So my preference is not to go down to something that. But if council were of the view that it had to go to change by 1 or 2 degrees, then of course it's fine.
But it does provide, and rather than having skylights, which can also be an issue, it also then provides the opportunity to let light into the back of the room by having a row of highlight windows that are openable and let the light in.
Well, you can, that's right. But look, as I say, we have gone through, a lot of this comes down to the internal space for the owners. And it starts with the springing point, which was reduced to a point, which you couldn't go any lower. And remember, with this place, we can't go lower because there's a board sewer underneath. So we're sort of hamstrung by the height limit and this physical board sewer below it. So we've got to fit in between that. So our springing point for that living area is determined by our floor to floors for the bedrooms and so on. And then the space within becomes much more voluminous inside as a result of the sloping roof. But we don't believe that the sloping roof is going to take away in any significance the views from the neighbours, such as the fact the reduction in size. I know it's nothing to do with the previous application, but compared to that, the reduction is quite significant.
Could everyone, apart from those speaking, please mute? Okay, very well. No further questions. Then, John?
No, thanks. No.
There was just one question about the height of the pool and the amount of fill that seems to be operating in that area. Is there any scope to reduce the height of the pool to address the concerns of the neighbours at that boundary? Or maybe take us through the logic?
Oh, well, the pool level is determined by the lowest level of the house. And, there's a I guess, the ease of going to the pool from your lower level. And then there is a succession of stairs down to the foreshore. And there are conditions about the type of planting and so on and so forth. And there is also a condition about a privacy screen next to the pool. So that adequately, I believe, caters for the concerns of the neighbour.
Can I just ask you, is it 6 metres above ground on the western boundary?
Well, I can't. Well, I actually couldn't tell you exactly right now.
Well, I think someone should be able to tell me that question, answer that question.
Well, the neighbours just come out and said the pool's 6 metres above the ground level, but this is the first I've heard of that. So, we would need to spend some time checking all the levels rather than doing it in a quick fire manner just in front of the screen.
Yeah, but Chair, these are exactly the points that should have been assessed in the application.
I don't know who's speaking, but I can't see them, and this is not a question and answer. So who may identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Chair. Tim Keith speaking. I'll turn my video on.
Yeah.
I guess that just reinforces our point. These are the issues that should have been properly assessed in the application.
Yeah. Can I just say we've heard your submission. And we will be asking questions and fully understanding the plans before us. So, as I said, it's not a situation where we have an opportunity for a response. So,
all right, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Right, so back to you then, Anthony. You wanted to raise some issues about.
Well, just a very quick answer. I mean, it has properly been assessed by council, I believe. It's a very extensive assessment. So it's not like they haven't considered anything.
Yeah.
So look, I'm just taking a quick measurement. It's 4.5 metres above the natural ground level at the worst point of the pool.
On the western boundary or on the northern?
West. The west.
Okay, well, 4.5 metres is pretty extreme.
Well, it's a very steep.
You would only normally have a 1.8 metre fence.
That's from the natural ground line, but remember, there's quite a large building going on next door with tiering of their gardens and so on and so forth. So I would literally have to go back there with a surveyor to ascertain the exact level difference between what is built next door and what was on what used to be there.
Okay, well, we'll look at the survey plans. Okay, yes, thank you.
Oh, well, my question about the condition C, the schedule of external colours. Talks about zinc.
What page number are you on?
107.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yep.
The schedule of external colours and finishes shall be amended to replace the zinc roof with the roof material that's non-reflective. Well, zinc is non-reflective already, so I just don't understand that. I mean, unless council are thinking of zinc aluminum, which would be reflective, but zinc itself is a non-reflective material. And that sort of comes back to a comment earlier from the Folly Point objector about the metal panels and their reflectivity. Like, we've used zinc many times, and if you look around the foreshore, zinc is used all over the foreshore. So I don't understand that condition, to be honest. I mean, the alternative would be some sort of metal cladding, more like a colour bond of monument or shale grey or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure architecturally that would not be the preference.
No, that's right. But so I mean, this is why we chose zinc, simply because of it. Well, obviously it's a lovely material, and it lasts forever, and it's non-reflectivity.
Yep. Okay.
Then the next one, which flows into D, the schedule of external materials shall be amended to change the colour of the render from off-white to a colour or tone which is non-reflective. Well, I sort of understand the white, although next door is white, but that doesn't matter. But I mean, to what colour exactly do council want us to go? Is it just like an earthy tone or something? Or grey, like a concrete colour or something?
Okay, so your preference is for that condition to what stay as it is, or just so I can understand
Well,
where.
well, my preference is condition C to be deleted only because zinc is already non-reflective. And
Yeah.
condition D, look, if I just a bit more guidance from council, it says just do it anything but off-white that's non-reflective. So I guess I'm just asking the panel, is a concrete colour, like a lightish grey, is that acceptable?
Yep, okay. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Any other conditions that you wish to raise?
No, that's good. That's good. I know there's talk about the privacy screens, and there was a good point earlier. You know, who do they benefit really? Because all the complaints are about view loss, and then you put up a privacy screen, and then what do you do? So, look, whether they're in or out, we just go with whatever the people want.
Okay, now just I have one question with respect to the jacaranda to be retained on the foreshore area.
Right.
As opposed to it being replaced with a tuckaroo. So I think that the jacaranda is more characteristic of the foreshore.
All right.
And why would you want to remove it?
The only reason at the time, in discussions, I think with council, was that a tuckaroo was a more appropriate tree, but like jacarandas, and obviously in springtime are beautiful, but and if you go around the foreshore, when you see all the purple canopies, they are lovely. It's part of Sydney, but they're not a native. But look,
I know, yeah, that's right. But you can see through jacarandas, even with their leaves on. You can't see through a tuckaroo. I just thought that why not maintain the status quo, which is very evident throughout the whole area. Yep.
Yeah, you look, I'm happy with the jacaranda.
Right, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay then. Thank you all very much for your participation and assisting the panel, which will be for our deliberations later on this afternoon. And then we will be making our determination, which will be on the website by Friday afternoon. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
And can I close this part of the meeting, which is the public component, and we shall now go into the next item.
Chair, excuse me, but is there an opportunity to make a quick comment?
Well, I did call your name earlier, and I heard that you were just. I hope the applicant is still online because they need the opportunity to respond. I did call your name previously.
Yes, and I suggested that if it was an opportunity, I'd like to comment at the end if necessary.
Well, as I said, I told everyone what the process was in terms of submitters, but what is your concern? And we might need to get the applicant's architect back online. What's your submission?
Yes, well, thank you for hearing that. I'm sorry, I misunderstood because I did ask if it was potentially possible to speak at the end, and I thought you said it was. So I just want to say that
at the end of the submitters, not the end of the whole session. Yes, go on.
I see. I beg your pardon. May I speak or no?
You may, yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to reinforce what Mr. Keith was saying. Those of us to the west are really concerned about the huge bulk of this building. I mean, it is not as if it's a step down against the landform. It projects right out, and it also encroaches very severely on the foreshore area, unlike everything else to the west, and most of other buildings along this bay. So it just seems to me to be completely out of sync with everything else around here in scale and bulk and encroachment on the foreshore. I'd also mention that despite what Mr. Solomon says, there's been no attempt to contact me to have a look at what the impact would be on our property from view loss and that sort of thing either. So And I also felt frankly that the report by Sophie Perry organisation glossed over quite a lot of stuff, and it was, well, I don't want to say any more than that.
No, I suggest you don't say anything more because we are civil and we don't require the independent panel can make its own decisions on matters.
Yes, of course, of course. All right, thank you very much, Chair, for hearing me.
Okay, thank you. Now, have we got Mr. Anthony Solomon there?
No, he's left.
Can we just call him? Well, he hasn't had the opportunity to hear it. Okay, thank you. If everyone can depart from the first item.
Thank you.
And the public meeting is closed.